In the beginning, if we can even call it that, there was no light, no darkness, no silence to break, and no breath to begin anything. There was only a stillness so complete that even the word nothing feels too heavy for it. And then, in an instant, so brief it had no time to be measured, the universe exhaled into existence. Not slowly, not gently, but with a force so sudden it wrote the first chapter of reality before reality even knew it was a story. We call it the Big Bang. Yet even that name trembles under the weight of what actually happened. Because how can something erupt when there is no space for it to erupt into? How can time begin when nothing exists to feel its passing? But every birth hides a question. Every beginning whispers a doubt. And as the universe expanded like a newborn breath pushing into the cold, there was a deeper mystery lurking beneath its glow. What if that moment we treat as the first page was the beginning at all? What if the entire cosmos we can see, feel, and imagine is nothing more than a single frame in a far bigger story? In the first fraction of a second after the so-called beginning, the universe was not a place. It was not a sky. It was not a stage where matter could dance or light could travel. It was a haze of impossibility, a state so extreme that the very laws we use to describe reality simply disintegrate at its edges. Physicists call this the Planck era, a moment so brief, 1043 seconds, that to our minds it feels identical to zero. But it was not zero. It was the birthplace of everything that would ever become possible. And yet, as we step closer to that moment, something strange happens. The idea of a beginning starts to unravel. What we thought was a clean, sharp line becomes blurry, uncertain, almost illusory, as if the cosmos is hiding something behind its first breath. Classical physics cannot survive this place. Gravity becomes quantum. Space becomes turbulent. Time becomes uncertain. The universe is far too hot, too dense, too chaotic to behave in any predictable way. And because of that, we cannot point to a single instant and say, this is where it all started. The closer we get, the more the concept of before dissolves. It's as like walking up a mountain expecting to find a summit, only to discover the peak is wrapped in permanent storm. You can climb toward it, feel it, sense its presence, but the moment you try to step onto solid ground, the ground melts beneath your feet. The Planck era is not a moment we can observe. It is a horizon we can only approach, a boundary where all certainty ends. But even in this storm, something subtle was happening. Not an explosion, not a burst, but a quiet tension between chaos and order. Quantum fluctuations, tiny tremors in the fabric of existence, rippling and colliding like the earliest whispers of creation. These fluctuations were not noise. They were seeds. Seeds that would one day become galaxies, stars, planets, and eventually us. The universe did not emerge from silence. It emerged from probabilities. It emerged from a restless quantum sea that refused to stay still. And yet, that is where the questions begin to sharpen. Because if quantum fluctuations existed, then something must have been fluctuating. If laws like gravity and quantum mechanics operated here, then those laws must have existed before the universe had time to unfold. If the earliest seeds of creation were planted in the Planck era, then the soil they were planted in was not the beginning at all. It was already something. A prelude, a false dawn masquerading as the first sunrise. We often imagine the Big Bang as the ultimate spark, the moment everything burst into existence. But modern physics paints a more astonishing and unsettling picture. Instead of expanding calmly from a single point, the universe underwent a phase we call cosmic inflation, a hyper-accelerated expansion so violent and so brief that it outran the speed of light itself. Space didn't just grow. It exploded outward a trillion times before a single atom had the chance to form. And this inflation may not have been triggered by a beginning. It may have been triggered by a transition. Imagine water cooling to become ice. The water doesn't appear from nowhere. It shifts states. It reorganizes. It crystallizes. Inflation may have been the universe doing something similar, moving from one state of existence into another. A transformation, not a creation. A reshaping of something that may have already been there. This is where the story subtly changes its tone, because if inflation was a transition, then the Big Bang was not the first event. It was the first event we can see. The difference is small, but profound, like opening a book to page 1 and realizing later that the prologue was ripped out. We are reading the story from the earliest surviving page, mistaking it for the beginning. Symmetry breaking followed next another quiet but monumental turning point. In the deepest youth of the universe, all forces were one: gravity, electromagnetism. The strong and weak nuclear forces fused together in perfect unity. But unity is inherently unstable. With the extreme energies of early space cooling just enough, this symmetry fractured. Forces split off from one another like shards of a broken mirror. And each fracture changed the rules. Each break wrote new laws into the fabric of reality, laws we still live under today. But if the laws of nature were created through transitions, cracks, and shifts, then they did not exist at the first moment, which means the universe began without rules, without structure, without the scripts we now use to describe it. And if there were no laws at the start, then what does it mean to say there was a beginning at all? A beginning requires conditions. It requires a before and an after. It requires time. And time itself only started flowing once the universe cooled enough for events to unfold in sequence. Before that, the distinction between past and future dissolves, causality shivers, order and chaos blur together. Time, in its earliest state, did not move. It waited. This is where philosophy and physics begin to converge like two streams meeting in the dark. We humans are storytellers by instinct. We understand life through beginnings and endings, through doors that open and doors that close. But the universe may not share our narrative structure. It may not obey our emotional need for a starting point. What if the beginning exists only because our minds crave one? What if temporality is a lens, not a law, a frame placed on the film of existence so that we can comprehend it? Physicists now suspect that the Big Bang is not the ultimate threshold, not the origin of everything, but the origin of everything we can observe. It is a horizon, the point beyond which our current understanding cannot pass, a veil drawn across a deeper reality, a curtain hiding the stage before the lights came up. And this leads to an unsettling and beautiful realization. The Planck era may not have happened once. It may be something that happens over and over in pockets of a much larger multiverse. Inflation may not have been a singular event. It may be continuously happening, spawning bubble universes endlessly, each bubble expanding into its own cosmos, each cosmos with its own laws, its own constants, its own version of reality. In this view, our universe is not the story. It is a chapter, a scene, a single frame in a cosmic film so vast that even imagination trembles at its scope. We search for beginnings because we fear endlessness. A story without a start feels unanchored, frighteningly open. But the universe does not seem to fear this. It does not cling to boundaries or insist on a first moment. It is comfortable with eternity, comfortable with transitions instead of origins, comfortable with a mosaic of realities, each blooming out of quantum fields like sparks leaping from an unseen fire. And yet something within us still asks, why did time begin to move here? Why did the clock start ticking in our universe and not in another place, another state, another possibility? That question rests at the heart of modern cosmology. We can trace time backward through cosmic eras, through plasma and particles, through symmetry and inflation, all the way to the Planck boundary, but we cannot cross it. And that boundary might not be physical. It might be conceptual, a limit of our understanding, rather than a limit of existence. The illusion of a beginning is not a deception. It is a reflection of our viewpoint. When you stand at the edge of the ocean, the horizon looks like the end of the world, but it's not. It asks simply the limit of what your eyes can see. The universe is offering us the same quiet truth. The Big Bang is our horizon, not the edge of everything, but the edge of our perception. And so we step back from the first fraction of a second with a deeper understanding and a deeper mystery. Time opened its eyes here, but the darkness before those eyes awakened remains unknown. If time itself needed a beginning, what existed before the clock began to tick? Imagine for a moment that reality is not continuous, not a flowing river of time, but something far stranger, something closer to a film strip. Each frame a frozen, self-contained universe, each slice complete in itself, yet meaningless without the countless others beside it. Now imagine that the universe we call home, the one we V-mapped with telescopes and equations, is just one frame in that cosmic reel. A single image suspended between infinite others, each carrying its own version of reality, its own laws, its own history. Suddenly existence feels less like a story with a beginning, and more like a gallery of eternal scenes, each waiting for a projector that may or may not exist. This metaphor is not just poetry. It echoes deep inside modern physics. Because if inflation didn't stop everywhere but only in our particular pocket, then other pockets must still be expanding, blooming, splitting, and freezing into their own universes. Eternal inflation becomes less of a hypothesis and more of an architectural blueprint for an infinite multiverse. And each universe is not born from a shared beginning. Each is its own frame, its own physics, its own destiny. The inflationary field doesn't behave like a firework. It behaves like a fractal storm. Wherever inflation slows, a universe crystallizes. Wherever it continues, the multiverse grows. And because inflation stretches space faster than light, these universes drift apart so violently that they can never meet again. They never share information. They never collide. To us, they may as well not exist. But if reality were a film strip, they would be the neighboring frames, silent, untouched, unreachable, yet undeniably present. But this idea raises a deeper question. If these frames exist all at once, then what is time? Does time flow through the film, or do we move across the frames? Or is time nothing more than the illusion caused by flipping through slices of reality? What if motion, change, history, everything we experience comes not from the world transforming, but from our consciousness sliding from one frame to the next? This is where physics begins to sound like philosophy wearing a lab coat. Quantum theory suggests that reality doesn't evolve smoothly. It jumps, it snaps, it selects from multiple possibilities. In a quantum system, all futures exist as probabilities until a measurement forces one outcome to become real. But the other possibilities don't vanish. They decohere, splitting into alternate branches. According to the many worlds interpretation, every quantum event produces countless parallel frames, each just as real as the one we inhabit. Every decision you make, every particle interaction, every fluctuation in the vacuum creates new universes, like pages falling out of an infinite book. This is not science. Fiction. It is a mathematically consistent interpretation of quantum mechanics, one that many physicists quietly suspect might be true. And if it is true, then we are not watching a film. We are inside an endless branching reel, where each frame multiplies into countless others. Our universe is not a single story. It is a crossroads of infinite timelines, overlapping like light rays, branching like cosmic rivers, diverging like roots beneath an unseen tree. But there is another layer to this, a deeper cut, a stranger idea. Imagine the film of reality not spread out in a line, but fully laid out at once. Every frame, every branch, every universe existing simultaneously in a timeless structure. In this view, time does not flow. Time does not pass. Time does not move forward like an arrow or cycle like a wheel. Time is a coordinate, a place you occupy within the film, and your consciousness is the traveler, drifting across the frames, giving life to the illusion of motion. This is known as the block universe picture, supported by relativity. Past, present, and future are not events unfolding, they are locations in a four-dimensional landscape. We do not watch time, we inhabit it. We are creatures made of memory, carried through a structure that does not change, yet feels alive only because we experience it frame by frame. But if this is true, then how many frames exist? How big is the real? String theory whispers an answer, one as vast as it is bewildering. It predicts a landscape of possible universes, each with different physical constants, different laws, different geometries. Not just a handful, not even 1,000, but 2,500 possible universes or more. Numbers so large they crush imagination. Each universe a solution to the equations. Each frame a stable valley in an unimaginably large terrain of possibilities. And we, humans on a blue planet orbiting a yellow star, occupy just one tiny hollow in this infinite landscape. It is humbling, it is terrifying, and it is beautiful. Because within this cosmic film strip, our universe becomes a moment of improbable harmony, a place where stars ignite, atoms bind, and consciousness dares to wonder why it exists at all. Out of the infinite frames that could have existed, we inhabit one, where the constants align perfectly to allow complexity, life, thought. Every breath we take is a statistical miracle. Every moment is a fragile balancing act written into the mathematics of our frame. And suddenly, the question changes. It is no longer, why did the universe begin? It becomes, why does our universe look the way it does? Why this frame? Why here? Why now? Science calls this the anthropic puzzle, but philosophy has been wrestling with its shadows for centuries. If an infinite number of frames exist, then most universes are silent, sterile, dark. Places where matter never clumps, where energy never balances, where time unravels before anything can happen at all. And yet we find ourselves in a frame, filled with structure, warmth, chemistry, stars, a frame teeming with meaning. It forces us to consider something uncomfortable. Perhaps we exist not because this universe is special, but because it is one of the rare frames where life can exist. And life is the projector. Consciousness is the lens. The universe becomes visible only when there is something inside it capable of observing it. And that idea leads to the next twist. If consciousness moves through frames, if our awareness stitches them into a flowing story, then causality itself might be a product of perception. A rule we impose, a structure that arises from the way we experience time. Events feel ordered because we experience them in sequence. But the film strip exists independently of our minds. The frames sit side by side in silent eternity. Cause and effect might be nothing more than the narrative force generated by an observer climbing through the structure. This is the unsettling symmetry between quantum mechanics and the cosmic film strip. In quantum mechanics, observation selects a reality. In the block universe, observation gives the static structure a sense of motion. In both cases, the observer is not an afterthought of the universe. The observer is part of the mechanism. But what if no one is watching? Does the film still play? Physics answers calmly. Yes, existence does not rely on an audience, but our experience of existence does. The frames do not require us, but the movie does. Without consciousness, there is only the film strip. Without consciousness, time is a frozen coordinate. Without consciousness, the universe is not a story, it is a sculpture. This realization brings us to the heart of the mystery. If the universe is just one frame and the multiverse is the film strip, and time is the illusion of moving through these slices, then what lies beyond the strip? Does the real have an edge? Does it loop? Does it grow? Does it rest inside a larger structure, a higher dimensional library of all possible realities? Some theories whisper yes. The bulk of higher dimensional space might contain all universes, with each frame a vibrating membrane floating in a larger sea. Others suggest the multiverse is not spatial at all, but mathematical. An abstract realm where every universe is a solution written into a cosmic equation. And some theories stretch further, imagining the film strip not as a physical object, but as an eternal informational pattern, woven into the fabric of existence, like the threads of an infinite tapestry. But even in these grand visions, one question remains untouched, silent, looming. If the frames exist, if the film strip exists, if the universes bloom endlessly, who or what is holding the reel? If a cosmic film strip exists, filled with countless universes like frames suspended in silence, we are forced into a question that human intuition resists with every fiber of its being. Who wrote it? Who arranged the rules? Who designed the laws that give each frame its structure and possibility? It is here, in the space between awe and fear, that modern physics offers a revelation colder and stranger than myth. Perhaps no one did. Perhaps the story has no author. Perhaps the laws of nature are not written by a mind, but emerge from nothing, arising the way frost patterns form on glass or melodies appear in the wind. Patterns without a planner. Order without an organizer. Meaning without a maker. It is an idea so unsettling that the mind instinctively flinches away. Because we are creatures who evolved within stories, stories told by parents, elders, cultures, religions, histories. Every narrative we know has a voice behind it. Every beginning has an intention. Every rule comes from a rule giver. But the cosmos may not share this narrative instinct. The universe may be a story that writes itself. To understand this, we must return to the earliest moments of existence, to the time before atoms, before forces, before even the concept of direction. A moment when the universe had no structure at all, just an ocean of raw possibility. In that primordial state, something remarkable occurred, not through command, not through purpose, but through the mathematics of nature settling into stability. Physicists call this symmetry breaking. A grand symmetry once existed in the earliest universe, a place where all forces were fused as one. No difference between gravity and light. No separation between nuclear forces and electromagnetism. A perfect, elegant unity. But perfect symmetry is fragile. It cannot hold as the universe cools. So the symmetry shattered, splitting into the four fundamental forces we know today. A cosmic mirror breaking into pieces not by intention, but by inevitability. This shattering shaped everything: the formation of atoms, the birth of stars, the chemistry of life. The universe did not choose these laws. It fell into them, the way a stone falls into the lowest point of a valley. Here, order did not come from a plan. Order came from the collapse of chaos. But this is only the beginning of the strangeness, because when symmetry broke, it produced not just forces, but numbers. The exact strengths of gravity, electromagnetism, and nuclear forces froze into place. Frozen with exquisite precision. Frozen with accuracy so delicate that if even one constant were altered by a fraction of a percent, stars would never ignite, atoms would never bond, and the universe we know would never exist. This is the fine-tuning problem, one of the most haunting puzzles in all of science. Why are the constants of nature so perfect for complexity? Why do these numbers sit exactly where they must? If no designer exists, how can such perfection emerge? One explanation is as simple as it is vast. We live in the frame that works. Out of the infinite universes in the cosmic film strip, most are barren. Most collapse instantly. Most tear themselves apart. Most remain frozen, silent, or violently hostile to anything resembling structure. But a tiny fraction, an immeasurably small sliver, happen to fall into the right combination of constants. And only those frames can hold beings capable of asking the question. Natural selection, but on a cosmic scale, not guided, not intentional. A filtering process baked into the mathematics of infinite possibility. We observe a fine-tuned universe because only in fine-tuned universes does observation become possible. It is unsettling. It is humbling. It feels like an answer and a non-answer at the same time. Yet fine-tuning is only one thread. Another emerges from the vacuum itself. Contrary to intuition, vacuum energy is not empty. It is a churning sea of quantum fluctuations particles popping in and out of existence, fields trembling with restless potential. The vacuum is pregnant with possibility. From this restless energy, the laws of physics emerge like ripples in a pond. Rules crystallize from the vacuum the way shapes form in snowflakes naturally, spontaneously, without guidance. In this view, the laws of nature are not commandments, they are patterns, self-organizing structures arising from the base fabric of reality. Nothingness is not simple. Nothingness is not void. Nothingness is the canvas on which everything paints itself. And here lies the deepest thought of all. If the laws of nature emerge naturally from the vacuum, and if universes emerge naturally from inflation, and if symmetry shatters naturally into forces, and if constants settle naturally into stable values, then the universe is not a created story. The universe is a story that creates itself. This idea is terrifying because it removes the comforting notion of a guiding hand, but it is also beautiful because it reveals something profound. Order does not require authority. Structure does not require intention. Complexity does not require a mind. The cosmos is capable of writing its own laws. We see this in the mathematics. We see it in the vacuum. We see it in the self-assembling nature of systems everywhere. Galaxies form spirals without an architect. Crystals grow without a designer. Life evolves without a blueprint. Consciousness emerges from cells that never knew they were building a mind. Why should the universe be different? But this realization leads us to a more delicate question, one that touches the boundary between science and philosophy. If no author exists, what anchors the story? What ensures consistency across the cosmic frames? Why don't the laws change from moment to moment? Why does mathematics remain stable? Some physicists believe the answer lies in the nature of mathematics itself, that mathematics is not invented, it is discovered, an eternal structure underlying existence. And our universe is simply one expression of that structure. The laws of nature are not chosen. They are the only solutions that remain stable in the grand equation. In this picture, the universe is not written. The universe is solved. But even this leaves us with a whisper of discomfort. Because if mathematics is eternal, then does that mean something existed before the universe? Does the equation itself predate the cosmos? Or does the equation only exist because the universe is here to embody it? We cannot escape the circularity. The story writes the laws. The laws write the story. Each gives birth to the other in an endless loop. It is a paradox that feels almost mythical in its symmetry, and yet the most humbling insight is still ahead. Even if no author exists, the universe still unfolds with elegance. Patterns bloom, structures persist, stars burn with lifetimes written into their cores. Gravity moves with a steady hand. Light travels with unwavering speed. Quantum fields hum with unbreakable rhythm. A self-written cosmos does not feel sloppy or accidental. It feels precise, balanced, focused, as though the absence of an architect does not diminish the design but elevates it into something more mysterious. Perhaps the greatest fear is not that no one is steering the story. Perhaps the greatest fear is that the story does not require steering. That order comes naturally. That meaning is something we project onto the canvas of physics, that the universe is enough without a storyteller. And yet notice what happens inside you as you hear this. The fear softens. The wonder rises. Something inside surrenders, not in despair, but in humility, because there is a quiet beauty in a universe that needs no author, a universe that assembles itself from the raw fabric of possibility, a universe that organizes chaos into symmetry, symmetry into laws, and laws into worlds, a universe that gives rise to creatures capable of questioning it. If no storyteller exists, then we are not characters in a written tale. We are the result of the cosmos learning to observe itself. We are the universe becoming aware of the story it tells without a voice. And maybe that is the most moving revelation of all, a story without a writer yet perfectly told. There comes a moment in every great story when the camera, after sweeping across mountains and oceans, begins to move inward, when the vastness retreats and what once felt infinite narrows into something small, fragile, and deeply personal. After exploring the cosmic film strip, the endless frames, the self-written laws, we now arrive at the most improbable emergence in the entire story, a frame that knows it exists. For billions of years, the universe expanded in silence. Stars burned without witnesses. Galaxies collided without memory. Time passed without a single thought to measure it. But somewhere in the quiet corners of this cosmic reel, something astonishing began to take shape. Not in the hearts of quasars or the cores of galaxies, but in tiny molecular lattices drifting through the warm light of ordinary stars. Chemistry learned to copy itself. Molecules learned to cooperate. Networks of atoms began to store patterns. And across unimaginable spans of time, matter discovered something new: awareness. It did not happen all at once. There was no single moment when the universe suddenly woke up. Instead, consciousness emerged the way a sunrise does, slowly, gradually, shadows dissolving until light finds everything. Neurons formed, networks grew, minds ignited. And in one small part of one unremarkable galaxy, matter began to reflect upon itself. The dust looked back. Scientists call this the emergence of complexity. Cells combining into tissues, tissues into organs, organs into nervous systems. But the poetic truth is more delicate. Consciousness is the universe folding inward, turning its gaze toward itself. It is the cosmos attempting to understand the cosmos. This idea, once purely philosophical, has gained scientific weight. Patterns in the brain behave like networks of galaxies, nodes exchanging signals, building maps of experience. Neurons communicate through electrical storms that resemble the branching of lightning, the spreading of river deltas, the clustering of matter itself. Everything follows the same mathematics, the same architecture, the same unspoken grammar of complexity. Consciousness is not an accident. It is the natural consequence of structure that becomes deep enough to model itself. But even this does not capture the wonder, because consciousness does something no star or black hole or galaxy has ever done. It asks questions, it reflects, it doubts, it imagines, it suffers, it dreams. And perhaps most importantly, it recognizes the existence of the frame. It recognizes the universe. Think about this. For most of cosmic history, existence unfolded blindly. But the moment a mind appeared capable of awareness, capable of asking, "What am I?" the universe achieved something extraordinary. It became a story that contains a reader. Some physicists argue that consciousness is simply what happens when computation becomes rich enough, when billions of neurons weave information tightly enough to create a coherent inner world. But others touch on something deeper. Some suspect that consciousness may be woven into the fundamental fabric of reality. That awareness is not an emergent property, but a basic feature like space, time, or energy arriving in greater and greater intensity as complexity grows. This is the whisper behind panpsychism, the idea that every particle carries a faint glimmer of experience, not thoughts, not emotions, but the rawest spark of subjectivity. When trillions of these sparks combine, the flame becomes a mind. And then there are quantum theories of consciousness, ideas suggesting that awareness might not arise from neurons alone, but from quantum processes inside them, moments where superposition collapses, where probability becomes actuality, where the universe chooses a reality. It is controversial, it is debated, but it reveals something important. We are still learning what consciousness is, still grasping for the... Yet even amidst these mysteries, one truth shines through. Without consciousness, the universe is a film strip without movement. Frames exist, laws operate, matter evolves, but nothing is observed, nothing is experienced, nothing is known. When a conscious being opens its eyes, the story acquires meaning. This may sound poetic, but it has a scientific echo in the anthropic reasoning we touched earlier. We observe a universe capable of sustaining minds precisely because only such universes can host observers. Without consciousness, the cosmic film strip would still exist, but it would be dark. A gallery without visitors, a library without readers. And somehow, against staggering odds, one of its frames produced something capable of reflection, something capable of love, something capable of fear, creativity, despair, hope, something capable of wondering why it exists at all. You. Your consciousness is not outside the universe. Your consciousness is an expression of it, a rising complexity forged from stardust, structured by evolution, illuminated by subjective experience. The atoms in your brain were once scattered in supernovae. The calcium in your bones was forged in the death throes of ancient stars. The carbon that forms your thoughts was once drifting through interstellar clouds. Every part of you is ancient. Every molecule carries the history of galaxies. And yet, within this cosmic inheritance, something new appeared: the ability to know. This is where the narrative becomes intimate, because suddenly, the universe is not something distant. It is not a cold machine. It is not an indifferent expanse. It is within you. It thinks through you. It feels through you. You are the universe experiencing one of its own frames from the inside. The distance collapses. The scale shrinks. The cosmos becomes personal. And through this connection, a strange question emerges. Did consciousness complete the story? Is awareness the final step in the universe, understanding its own laws? Some physicists suggest that observers might play a role in shaping reality, that quantum events do not resolve until they are observed. That measurement, and therefore awareness, locks probability into a single outcome. If that is true, then consciousness is not just a byproduct of the cosmos. It is a participant in its unfolding, a collaborator in the story. But even if quantum interpretations go no further than metaphor, the emotional truth remains powerful. Consciousness is the moment when the universe gains the ability to care. Care about survival, care about beauty, care about meaning, care about the difference between existence and non-existence. This act marks the first time in the documentary where emotion fully enters the frame. Because consciousness is not just an emergent property. It is an experience. It is loneliness and wonder and fear and joy and longing. It is the ache of being finite in an infinite cosmos. It is the miracle of being aware at all. And through that awareness, something beautiful happens. Meaning arises. Not objective meaning, not cosmic destiny, but the meaning you choose to create. The meaning your mind weaves from experience. The meaning that gives shape to time. Perhaps the universe does not need meaning, but minds do. And through those minds, the cosmos learns to tell a story. Not a story with a predetermined ending. Not a story written by an architect, but a story shaped by the perspectives of billions of conscious beings, each adding color, tension, sorrow, and hope. And because consciousness experiences time sequentially, one moment after another, it creates the illusion of moving through the film strip. It creates the feeling of a narrative thread. It gives the static frames a sense of direction. Consciousness turns existence into a story simply by observing it. This is the quiet revelation of the act. You are not passively living in the universe. You are actively giving it meaning. You are not watching the frame. You are participating in it. You are helping the universe realize what it is. And for the first time in the documentary, the perspective shifts. No longer are we looking at the universe from the outside. No longer are we describing equations or distant galaxies. We are looking inward into the one place where the universe becomes aware of itself, inside the mind, inside your thoughts, inside the fragile miracle of consciousness that sits like a small flame in the vast darkness of space. You are not small. You are not irrelevant. You are the unlikely aperture through which the cosmos feels its own existence, and that is the quiet miracle of being alive. For the first time, the frame looks back. If consciousness is the frame that knows it exists, then Act 5 asks a natural, almost childlike question. What about the universe itself? Could something so vast, so ancient, so intricately structured feel like a living being? Not in the biological sense, not with arteries or breath, but in the deeper sense, the sense of having a birth, a youth, a maturity, and eventually an ending. The more closely we study the cosmos, the more it resembles a great, evolving organism. It expands, adapts, organizes itself into complex structures, consumes fuel, transforms energy, remembers its origins, and moves toward a final state, the way all living things do. And as strange as it sounds, we are part of its internal life cells in a body too grand to ever fully perceive. So let us walk through the universe as though it were a character, a companion, a traveler with its own biography written across billions of years. Its story begins with a moment we cannot truly understand but can only feel. The universe's birth was not gentle. It was not quiet. It was not the soft arrival of a child into waiting arms. It was more like a sudden inhale from absolute silence. Inflation, its earliest heartbeat, expanded space faster than time could count. A trillion times larger in a fraction of a second. Childhood in an instant. A cosmic sprint before the first step had even been taken. Yet what fascinates cosmologists is not just the scale of this expansion, but its emotion. Inflation feels like urgency, like a newborn universe gasping into being. It is the first breath of a being that doesn't yet know it exists. Then comes its adolescence, a time of turbulence, change, and self-discovery. The universe cooled just enough for particles to bind into atoms. Hydrogen and helium filled the primordial darkness like soft, glowing embers. Gravity, still young and fierce, began pulling matter together. Dense regions grew denser. Sparse regions grew emptier. From this restless push and pull, the first stars flared into existence, enormous, unstable giants that burned with reckless youth. These were the universe's teenage years, loud, bright, chaotic. The first elements forged in the cosmic furnace. The first supernovae scattering seeds of heavier atoms. The first whispers of structure forming across billions of light years. And then, slowly, order emerged. The cosmic web took shape, filaments of galaxies stretching like neural pathways, clusters forming nodes of unimaginable scale. This was the universe entering its adulthood, mature enough for complexity, balanced enough for stability. The chaos of youth transformed into structure, harmony, rhythm. Star formation soared. Galaxies grew arms, spirals, halos. Black holes anchored their centers like beating hearts. And in at least one quiet corner of one galaxy, a star formed with just the right ingredients, and around it, tiny rocky worlds began to cool. Life emerged, consciousness awakened, and the universe gained something new, witnesses. It is here that the universe feels most alive, not because it has intentions or desires, but because it produces beings capable of telling its story, beings capable of feeling awe, beings capable of asking where they came from. In this sense, consciousness is the universe remembering itself, memory arising from matter, reflection emerging from dust. The universe's maturity is not static. It is dynamic, creative, ever-changing. Stars live and die like cells in a cosmic body. Energy flows through galactic circuits like blood through veins. Gravity and dark energy pull and push like opposing instincts. The cosmic web evolves like a living neural system, feeding stability into the expanding fabric of space-time. But even living beings age. And so does the universe. In the far future, trillions of years beyond now, the cosmic story enters its quiet decline. Star formation slows. The great furnaces dim. Galaxies drift farther apart as dark energy stretches the fabric of existence. Eventually, the last stars flicker out, leaving behind only embers. White dwarfs cooling into black dwarfs, neutron stars slowly evaporating, black holes shrinking through Hawking radiation. This is the universe in old age, tired, gentle, fading. Yet its aging carries a kind of peace, a slow exhale after a lifetime of expansion and change. Space grows emptier, time grows colder, but in this vast stillness, there is a calm that mirrors the stillness before the first moment, a symmetry, a full circle. Some cosmologists believe the universe may end in heat death, a silent, frozen equilibrium where no structure remains. Others suspect a vacuum decay, a sudden bubble of lower energy reality racing through space at the speed of light, rewriting the laws of physics in an instant. Still others imagine a big crunch, where gravity reclaims everything, collapsing the universe back into a singular point. Every scenario is different. Every scenario is final. Every scenario carries a flavor of cosmic mortality. And just like contemplating our own mortality, the thought pulls at something deep. There is sadness in imagining the last star. There is fear in imagining the last spark of matter fading into cold simplicity. But there is also beauty, a bittersweet acceptance that even the universe, with all its grandeur, follows a cycle. Birth, growth, transformation, dissolution. Nature writes this rhythm everywhere, in cells, in forests, in civilizations, in stars. Why not in the cosmos itself? In this act, the universe stops being a backdrop. It stops being a stage. It becomes a companion, a being that lived and evolved alongside us, even if we only occupy the smallest fraction of its timeline. And when we imagine its aging, something unexpected emerges: compassion. It becomes impossible not to feel for the universe, the way one feels for an elderly parent or a fading sunset. We realize that we care about the universe not because it needs us, but because it made us. It held the conditions for life. It forged the elements in our blood. It gave us a place to stand and a sky to wonder about. It carried us in its arms like a child fashioned from starlight. And as we walk with the universe through its final chapters, a quiet understanding settles in. Impermanence gives meaning. Without endings, nothing would feel beautiful. Without fragility, nothing would feel precious. The universe is not eternal, and that makes our existence within it all the more profound. But the story doesn't end with death. Not truly. Because endings in cosmology are not walls. They are thresholds. If a universe can emerge from nothing once, could it not happen again? If cosmic inflation spawned countless universes, could new ones arise after this one fades? Could the film strip loop back on itself? Could a new frame ignite from the ashes of the last? Physicists speak of eternal inflation, cyclic cosmologies, quantum rebirths, and vacuum transitions. None are proven, all are possible, and each one paints the universe not as a finite tale, but as a chapter in a larger, unknowable epic. A story with sequels, a story with echoes, a story with memory, even if not the kind we understand. And so we stand here, near the end of this act, holding a strange emotional truth. The universe feels alive because we are alive. We project onto it what we feel within ourselves. But this does not make the metaphor weak. It makes it human. It makes it intimate. It connects us to something far larger than our brief lives. The universe is not alive in the way we are, but it behaves like something living. It grows. It changes. It organizes. It remembers. It fades. And through consciousness, through us, it also wonders. So as we watch the final chapters unfold in slow cosmic time, with galaxies drifting apart like old friends saying their last goodbyes, we are left with one lingering, trembling question. Even a universe has a lifespan, so what lies beyond the last frame? If the universe has a lifespan, a beginning, a bloom, a long twilight, a final exhale, then we are pushed toward a question so unsettling that the mind instinctively strains against it. What exists beyond the last frame? What lies outside the universe, outside space-time, outside the story we have spent this entire film exploring? Is there even an outside to speak of? Or is outside itself a concept born from limited imagination? We have arrived at the edge of the map, the place where physics blends with philosophy, where science becomes an instrument not just for measurement, but for contemplation. In this act, the cosmos becomes a library, and our universe is simply one volume resting on an impossible shelf. But before we can step into that metaphor, we must confront the truth. The universe has no edge, not in space, not in time, not in the way a room has walls or a book has covers. Space itself curves and stretches without boundaries. Time flows in ways that defy intuition. Asking where the universe ends is like asking where a circle stops being a circle. It doesn't, it simply is. So if the universe has no physical boundary, where is the outside? Physics begins the explanation slowly, cautiously. It invites us into the concept of Hilbert space, an abstract mathematical arena larger than space, larger than time, larger than anything we normally call real. Every possible quantum state of the universe exists somewhere in this space. Every configuration of particles, every arrangement of energy, every possible universe. Hilbert space is not a location. It is possibility itself. To stand inside this idea is to feel the ground fall away, because suddenly, the universe is not a singular object, but a vector, one point in a vast structure of everything that could ever exist. And if our universe is one vector, then countless others sit alongside it in that infinite geometric landscape. From here, the metaphor of the cosmic library begins to crystallize. If Hilbert space is the architecture, then each universe is a book. Not just a story, but a complete arrangement of rules, constants, histories, and outcomes. Some books are sparse, some chaotic, some brimming with complexity, some short-lived, some infinitely strange. And ours, the book we live inside, is simply one among them. But this is where the awe deepens. Because the library is not arranged in rows. It is not stacks of matter. It is not shelves of galaxies. It is a mathematical infinity, a place where universes exist, not as physical objects, but as patterns. as solutions, as symmetries and breakings of symmetry. In this realm, asking what lies outside our universe is like asking what lies outside a novel. The answer is not space. The answer is not matter. The answer is everything that is not this story. The library is all the stories that could ever be. And yet, as comforting as the metaphor is, physics goes further. Some theories propose that universes are not books side by side, but pages woven into a higher dimensional structure. String theorists imagine the bulk, a vast dimensional expanse in which entire universes float as membranes brains. They call them perhaps colliding, bouncing, birthing new realities through contact. Others view the multiverse as a branching quantum tree, its roots sinking deep into Hilbert space, its leaves forming all possible worlds. Still others speak of the holographic boundary, a place where the entire three-dimensional universe is encoded on a two-dimensional surface, the way a black hole stores information. If that is true, then the universe is not a volume, but a projection, a shadow cast from mathematics onto the screen of space-time. Outside the projection, only the code remains. But even these scientific structures do not satisfy the deeper question, because behind every model inflationary, quantum, holographic, lies an even more profound doubt. Can something exist outside existence? To even ask this is to stretch the mind past its evolutionary limits. Human intuition grew up inside a small local world, a world with edges and surfaces, walls and skies, beginnings and endings. The idea of outside the universe short-circuits those instincts. The question has no frame to sit inside, and yet the mind keeps reaching. What if the universe is not the totality of existence, but simply one configuration of a deeper reality? What if space-time is merely a chapter in a longer book? What if the rules we take for granted, causality, locality, continuity, are not universal truths, but conventions of our frame, our story? The dread appears first, a sense of infinite emptiness, a fear that stepping outside the universe means stepping into absolute nothing, a void without structure, without meaning, without being. But the dread passes as quickly as it came, because pure nothing cannot hold possibility. Pure nothing cannot give rise to universes. Pure nothing cannot support mathematics, laws, patterns, or structures. Pure nothing cannot contain a library. So if something exists outside the universe, it cannot be nothing. It must be something else, something deeper, something more fundamental than space-time itself. Perhaps outside the universe is not a place. Perhaps it is freedom, the freedom of all possible worlds. The library metaphor strengthens. Imagine a hall so vast no traveler could ever walk through it. Shelves stretching beyond sight, each book a universe. Some thin, some thick, some written in familiar physics, others filled with alien geometries. Many never open. Many evaporate after a single page. But everything that can exist does. Not because a creator placed the books there, not because a mind imagined them, but because mathematics allows them. In this cosmic library, there is no center, no origin, no final shelf. Every universe is both trivial and immeasurably precious. Our universe is one volume in an infinite collection, but here lies the paradox. If the library is infinite, then the word outside loses its meaning. You cannot step beyond a boundary that has no edge. Infinity contains its own beyond. This leads to the most radical thought in all of cosmology. What if existence has no outside? Not because it is a closed bubble, but because everything that could possibly be is already part of the whole. What if outside the universe is simply the rest of existence, the universes we are not in, the laws we do not follow, the stories our frame does not tell? The idea is overwhelming at first. The scale is too large, too abstract, too indifferent to human concerns. But then something shifts, something quiet, something soft. The fear dissolves into curiosity, because if the library is infinite, then the universe is not lonely. If the library is infinite, then our story is not fragile. If the library is infinite, then creation is not a singular miracle, it is a chorus, an endless unfolding of possibilities, each as real as ours, each held by the same mathematical fabric. And suddenly, what lies beyond the last frame is not frightening. It is serene. It is spacious. It is natural. Because the universe is not a fortress surrounded by void. It is a sentence inside an infinite book, and our existence is one expression of a deeper grammar. We are not trapped in a single reality. We are woven into an endless fabric. We belong to something so vast we cannot fall out of it. So as this act draws to a close, the perspective widens once more beyond galaxies, beyond black holes, beyond entropy and endings. We drift upward into the metaphorical library, into the mathematical architecture, into the infinite Hilbert space of all possible worlds. Our universe becomes a book, a chapter, a paragraph, a line, and the question no longer frightens us. What exists outside the universe? Everything that is not this story. And if the library is infinite, perhaps our universe is just one sentence. If every act before this one has been an attempt to approach the truth, then this act dares to step into it. We have journeyed from the Planck era to the cosmic film strip, from architectless laws to consciousness awakening inside matter. We have treated the universe as a character, wandered beyond its boundaries, walked the shelves of an infinite library. But now, something curious happens. The metaphors begin to circle back on themselves. The story starts to notice itself, and quietly, subtly, a new possibility emerges, one so strange and so elegant that it feels less like an answer and more like a realization. Maybe the universe isn't a one frame. Maybe it's every frame trying to understand itself. This idea begins with a simple but astonishing observation. The universe produces observers, not by miracle, not by design, but through the natural rise of complexity. Stars create heavy elements. Those elements form planets. On some planets, chemistry organizes into life, and in some forms of life, consciousness blossoms the ability to reflect, to question, to imagine. At first glance, this seems like a side effect, a cosmic coincidence. But physicist John Wheeler proposed something different, something radical. The universe requires observers, not as a luxury, not as decoration, as participants in its very existence. Wheeler called it the participatory universe. His idea was not mystical, but quantum. Reality is not fully real until it is observed. The act of measurement collapses possibilities into facts. The universe in this sense is unfinished until consciousness engages with it. The observer is not outside the universe. The observer is woven into its mechanism. And suddenly, the journey we've taken begins to loop back. Because if the universe produces consciousness, and consciousness brings the universe into fuller focus, then reality becomes a feedback loop, a dialogue, a story writing itself in both directions. We observe the universe observes itself through us. The separation dissolves. What once felt like two entities, the cosmos and the observer, becomes one continuous process. But this self-referential elegance doesn't stop at quantum theory. It appears again in holography, the idea that the entire three-dimensional universe may be encoded on a distant two-dimensional boundary. If this is true, then our reality is not a volume, but a projection, a story unfolding through information. And information requires interpretation. It requires readers. A holographic universe is not something you are trapped in. It is something you participate in. The boundary contains the information. Your consciousness brings the meaning. Physics provides the canvas. Mind provides the image. This is not metaphor. This is mathematics. And it leads us straight into the next revelation. Time may not be fundamental. Time may be something that emerges from entanglement, from relationships between states, from the act of observing change. In this view, the arrow of time is not a built-in feature of the universe. It is something consciousness experiences as it moves through frames. The universe does not flow in time. Consciousness creates the experience of flowing. And now, a subtle shift happens inside us. We feel the story bending back toward its beginning. We feel the structure of reality folding into a strange symmetry. Because if the universe creates observers, and observers create the flow of time, and time gives shape to the universe, then the circle closes. The universe generates the conditions for minds. Minds generate meaning. Meaning shapes the perceived universe. And that perceived universe fosters new minds. Reality becomes cyclical, self-sustaining, reflexive. Not a one-way story told by nature, but a story nature and consciousness write together. This is where philosophy enters with its quiet, ancient questions. What is reality without observers? What is meaning without mind? What is a universe without the ability to be known? For most of human history, we believed that we were separate from the cosmos, small, temporary beings living inside a universe too vast to ever fully comprehend. But the more science reveals, the more that separation dissolves. Consciousness is not an accidental byproduct of cosmic events. It is a phase of them, a natural extension of the same laws that govern stars and quarks. You are not outside the universe looking in. You are the universe looking at itself. Your thoughts are not small. They are cosmic processes happening on a local scale. Your questions are not trivial. They are the universe asking itself what it is. This act is the moment the documentary becomes transcendent. The moment the boundaries between science, philosophy, and emotion blur into a single truth. Reality is participatory. Reality is dialogic. Reality is not a cold machine, but a self-reflective structure capable of producing beings who feel wonder, sorrow, hope, and curiosity, the raw ingredients of meaning. The story doesn't need a writer. It writes itself by generating minds capable of interpreting it. And suddenly, the metaphors of earlier acts become literal. The film strip is not external. The frames are not separate. Consciousness does travel through the story. Consciousness is the mechanism by which the story unfolds. Every insight threads back into the whole. Every question becomes part of the answer. Every observer is a storyteller. The universe is not understood from the outside. It is understood from within through the minds it produces, through the questions those minds dare to ask. And this leads to the final revelation of the documentary. Maybe the universe is not one frame, not even one film strip, but the totality of all frames reflecting on all others. Maybe existence is the infinite library. Maybe consciousness is the lamp by which the books are read. Maybe meaning is the language spoken between frame and observer. everything we have explored, inflation, quantum branching, holographic boundaries, emergent time points toward a single staggering conclusion. Reality is structured to know itself, not perfectly, not instantly, not universally, but gradually, fractally, through countless minds across countless worlds, each adding its own reflection to the grand mosaic. This is not mystical. This is not supernatural. This is the natural consequence of a universe capable of producing complexity deep enough to turn inward. And in that turning inward, something miraculous happens. Confusion becomes insight. Insight becomes peace. Peace becomes belonging. Because once you understand that the universe is not a distant object but a self-referential story, something inside you relaxes. The fear of insignificance dissolves. The dread of being lost in something too vast softens. You recognize that you are not an observer standing at the edge of an incomprehensible whole. You are part of the whole. You are a participant in its unfolding. You are a meaning-making structure inside a meaning-ready reality. The universe is not trying to hide its truth. The universe is trying to understand its truth through you. In the end, the question shifts one final time. We no longer ask, "What is the universe?" We ask, "What is the universe becoming through us?" And with that question, the circle completes. The story knows itself. The story feels itself. The story tells itself. We are the frame trying to understand the film. In the beginning, we asked a simple question disguised as an impossible one. Is our universe just one frame in a bigger story? And now, after wandering through cosmic births and endings, through quantum seas and infinite libraries, through consciousness awakening inside matter, the question feels different, softer, wider, less like something to be solved, and more like something to be lived. Because somewhere along the journey, the universe stopped feeling like an object out there and started feeling like a story we carry within us, a story we participate in simply by being aware. Every frame we explored, the first breath of space-time, the rise of galaxies, the emergence of minds was not separate from us. It led to us, and through us, the universe became capable of understanding the very questions it inspired. So we return to the opening paradox with new eyes. Maybe the universe is not one frame. Maybe it is the act of framing the act of meaning happening everywhere, all at once. Maybe existence is not a structure, but a story constantly interpreting itself. And maybe consciousness is the moment the story realizes it is being told. We often imagine that exploring the cosmos is a journey outward. But what if the journey has always been inward? What if the universe has been using stars and atoms and minds as mirrors, countless reflections, trying to see something timeless in themselves? What if the question, "What is the universe?" was never about finding an external truth, but awakening an internal one? In the end, the cosmos remains mysterious, unfinished, beautifully unresolved, but something within us has shifted. We understand now that we are not standing at the edge of the story, we are inside it, shaping it, remembering it.